Hey everybody, Brian Ullman at Ford Financial Group, and it has been a while since I've talked into the camera and talked about some of the things that are going on in the economy and markets and so on. But the reason why I'm chatting with you today is because I want to introduce you to our guest for the Casual Friday webcast, and we'll post this on on the podcast as well, the Financial Insights podcast. But we got right into the discussion with this guest, and so I wanted to intro this and let you know who we were talking to. If you don't know him, a friend of the firm, Joe Perry, is a mortgage broker here in the Central Valley, and he does great things, and he has a really keen insight into what's going on in real estate, financing real estate. So we're talking about mortgages and interest rates and things like that. And Joe really kind of spells out the difficult place that real estate is in and real estate financing is in right now. So it's going to be an interesting listen and watch. So I encourage you to email us if you have questions about what you're going to see, info@fordfg.com. So I will leave it to Joe. So you've got what is it now?
So this is an original 1984 He-Man Masters of the Universe toy poster.
That's amazing.
I found it like in an antique store and then had it framed, and it's got like all the little wrinkles on it and everything. Which usually you'd want something mint condition, but I think it reminds me of being a kid. So
yeah, I mean, I know I had a variation of that poster somewhere in my room as a kid. That's awesome. You've got you've got the real throwback background going on today.
Oh, for sure, dude. I'm a collector of things. I've got like my lunchbox baseball card comic. I got my I collect old 8-tracks.
Really? Do you have an 8-track player?
I do. It's right here.
Oh, that's amazing.
It reminds me of being in my grandma's station wagon with the wood paneling on the side and jiggling the John Denver cartridge to get it to play.
What's your favorite thing that you've got going on back there?
Oh man, there's tons of awesomeness. I think this is pretty special. The original.
Oh.
Original.
The original Voltron.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I have the blue leg. That's all that's left.
Just the leg?
Just the leg.
That's awesome.
My son loves playing with just the leg. I wish I've tried to find like the full on. There is new Voltron.
Mm-hmm. I watched it.
Yep. And it's okay. It's not the original.
Yeah. Here's another fun one real quick, and then we can talk work stuff. I would say this is one of my funny COVID purchases. Yeah. Probably most people did funny COVID purchases. When my wife saw the invoice sitting in our email box, she was like, "You did what?" And I was like, "Trust me, this is a mint condition
Teddy Ruxpin.
Teddy Ruxpin.
Does it work?
It does, dude. It does. I even put batteries in it and everything.
That really is in good shape.
Yeah, it came in the plastic box. I just took it out because I'm never gonna.
So someone was sitting on it new.
It was probably like in their rafters or something, and somebody moved or whatever.
And they put it on eBay instead of taking it to Salvation Army.
Mm-hmm.
Smart.
And then there's dumb people like me sitting on their couch going, "Ooh, Teddy Ruxpin."
That's funny. That's funny. Well, I'll tell you what, I appreciate you doing this again. The last time we did this, the feedback was great because you've got some insights into what is kind of an opaque market. I know you do the mortgage side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not selling homes and stuff, but they go hand in hand. And so you've got some insight into what's going on in residential real estate and even investing real estate more than anybody else. And it is a weird time right now. How would you describe things?
It's like Twilight Zone.
Yeah. I mean, last time I think the words you used were like nuclear winter or something.
Yes. Apocalyptic, maybe like a bit Chernobyl.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it remains that way, it seems.
I saw literally right before you and I got to talking here, I saw an article that said mortgage applications in the United States are at a 28-year low.
Ooh.
And rates are back into the late 90s. And then with what I about an hour ago on a rental property over on the coast, somebody was asking me what terms would look like, and I said, I'd probably mid-8s, low 9s, and the government's really just locked things up. So
you think that's where they're going to wind up, is mid-8s, low 9s, or because we just pushed above 7% here recently, right?
And that was, to be fair, that one was on a rental property over on the coast.
But, okay. So that's going to be a little bit more.
Yeah, they're going to price for that level of risk.
Sure.
I don't know how much higher you can raise rates because you've already, in my view, crippled the economy. When they had that report a couple of weeks ago about 500,000 new jobs being created.
Yes.
And I'm like, I don't know anybody who has a new job. I haven't heard of anybody who has a new job. I don't know anyone who's looking for a job, but I can easily count, especially former banking, real estate, investment friends, that over 50 people that have gotten terminated in the last 90 days.
Yes. Yeah. We've been hiring here in our office, and all of the applications that are coming in are really good professional people. Like, we haven't had a pool this deep to hire from, because they're all coming from your side of the world. It's pretty wild to watch. I know I have purposefully not sent you a bunch of stuff because I'd love to get your like real-time reactions. But one of it, it's interesting that you talk about jobs and job creation, what's going on. Because I actually found this chart. This is construction.
Oh,
yeah. No, I got one better here. This is from the Daily Shot, which is a daily email of all sorts of charts. These are real estate job openings here. And you can see the peak and then cratering that's happening right now. It's looking almost like not COVID level cratering, because that's 2020, but these are really, really sharp turns. The one I just showed you before was job openings in construction, because we just got the ADP jobs report, and it's like, this is, I mean, the sector is getting absolutely blasted, and we're seeing it right now in real time. You mentioned last time that the people who were applying for real estate mortgages were people like getting divorced and having to buy each other out. Is that the same? Is that what's going on still?
It's, I think from our last visit, like and almost feeding right back into the charts that you just showed, this was bananas. I have a friend that their company, I don't help with their mortgage stuff, but they do, I want to say, a little under 300 new homes per year that they build.
Oh, okay.
That's a decent sized company.
Sure.
They haven't sold a home in 5 months.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Well, it bears out in the numbers, because here, I've got another one. You're going to like this. This is also from the Daily Shot. This is the purchase. This is the mortgage purchasing index. And so you can see down here for 2023, we are at multi-year lows. Mortgage applications are at multi-year lows here, which is exactly what you're talking about. I think the rate where we were talking about rates going, the rate hike probability just with Powell talking this week has jumped. I think lots of people thought we were going to get a 25% rate increase here in March, and then that was going to be a wrap. And it certainly was pricing in, even as recently as, most of February, a 20% increase of a 0.5% rate increase in March. And the likelihood that that's going to pop has gone up north of 60%. I think at this point, more people are expecting it than not. The question is, I wonder where where does this wind up? Where do you think people are headed when you're talking to people who are looking to get a mortgage, whether it's on a rental property or an investment property or even a home? Like what tricks are people using, or what tricks are you helping people use to be able to navigate this environment?
And the hard part is, oh man, that's a graph I should have shared with you. Is the percentage of mortgages in the United States that are under 4%. And I want to say off the cuff, it was something like 85% of the mortgages are under 4%. And then it was like a really staggering number, like 70. I'm just kind of approximating these numbers. 70 were under 3 or 3.5.
Joe,
so
with great minds think alike, my man.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
This is the distribution of mortgages by current interest rate.
So nobody, the families, to answer your question, that reach out and, hey, Joe, we're having twins and our house isn't big enough, but because, they locked in at say 2 3/4 or 3% or whatever, they don't want their payment or their interest rate to almost triple. So they can't move without selling their house and getting the equity out of it. So you end up with still having an inventory problem with people that might be interested in moving. They can't afford it anymore.
Right. When you were predicting last time that the way this was going to work was people are like more home equity lines of credit, more tapping into equity to expand or remodel and do that kind of stuff. Are you doing more of those?
I've never done, or at least in the last 2 years, equity lines. It's really best fit for local community banks or credit unions.
Oh, really? Okay.
But I do know that equity line conversation I've personally had more than a lot over the last year, and more so than I have in probably the last 5 years combined.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting seeing this has altered so much. I mean, we even here with what we do with the investment stuff, I've said this a bunch of times on the last few podcasts. I've put more money in money markets. This is the kind of disruption that COVID, almost like COVID, brought with what's going on here. Except it's going to stick around a little bit longer. We're looking at what people have, and so we haven't had a whole lot of turnover in buying and selling. And interestingly, I think you'll get a kick out of this. This is mortgages by vintage.
Mm-hmm.
This is from Black Knight. And so most mortgages, it seems, are from the last 3 years, right?
Yep.
If you combine them all. So everybody was either refinancing or getting mortgages out. What's going on for people? Are new buyers just out of luck?
I mean, your choices can be extremely limited. And one of the other things, and just using the chart that you have right now, is when I say the agencies, I'm referring to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So
Sure.
I'd say that's where the bulk of mortgages all end up.
Yep.
The agencies know that this current climate is not forever. But they don't want to have early payoff. I'm going to totally pull this out of the air. A year from now, the world starts spinning on its axis normally.
Yeah.
Rates go from 7 to 5.5%. Well, everything that's been booked over the past 18 months would then get refinanced. So the agencies get paid off early, and they don't recoup their investment. And in some cases, can actually take a loss because of the early payoff. So what they're doing now is they're requiring points, or like a 1% or more, be paid by the buyers or the borrowers up front to warrant lending the money and kind of collecting their fee on the front end versus taking a loss on the back end from early payoff.
That makes things even less affordable, doesn't it?
It makes it more expensive.
Yeah.
Because it's more money out of the buyer's pockets.
Yeah. That's so folks who are coming to you for a mortgage because they're wanting to get in, because we're starting to see, we've got one here. I mean, home prices are starting to decline a little bit. Mm-hmm. Not in a meaningful way where we're really getting a lot going, but if someone who has been saving and saving and saving. Let's say they're in their 20s, maybe a newlywed couple, and they really, really want to buy a house. They're sick of living in an apartment. Prices, it's they're not competing with buyers the way they may have been a year or two ago. And they come to you and say, "Hey, Joe, how can we do this?" Is the answer just to pay more, or or are there some other kind of ways around an adjustable rate? It would probably be brain damage right now if rates are going
up. It's the adjustable rate mortgage or ARMs. I've been getting that question more so in the last 6 months than I have in the last decade. And the reality is you may imagine with the world being in the state that it's in, to throw in something that says adjustable rate mortgage in the same sentence. The market that buys these, like, we need security. We need long-term fixed rate risk-free payments is what they want. ARM or adjustable rate mortgage pricing is basically the same as 30-year, and in some cases higher. So, like, why would you even do it?
That doesn't make any sense.
The other kind of flip side, going to the whole pricing thing, a client asked me this question yesterday, is if prices decline, so his family's buying a new house in San Joaquin County, prices have already started to slip. And so he says, well, what if, a year, whatever from now, we want to refinance, but the values have come down. Am I going to have a problem? And in jumbo mortgages, like once the deal's booked, like the investor has no interest in changing the loan term because they bought the loan based on what was represented, which goes back to the, I guess, having a Fannie Freddie mortgage. I don't know if you remember HARP from the 2008, 2012. So the home affordable refinance program to help families that had no equity or negative equity at least lower their rate. I think there could be HARP 2.0 here in another year and a half, 2 years, if values actually do correct themselves like that. I wouldn't think it would be that dramatic, but I think it's possible.
Yeah, well, because we're in this weird spot where, home prices, people might be a little bit underwater if they bought in the last couple of years. But we haven't seen the value destruction going on the way we did in 2008. Largely because some of what we went over with everybody's with these low rates, it's hard to have home prices crater if no one wants to sell their house. You have that, that tiny inventory, the no supply problem that keeps prices kind of in check. It would seem.
Well, there's as a aside to this, there is a website that I've been monitoring since late 2007.
Oh, yeah, drop it on me.
It's called the Implodometer, and the Implodometer, if you want to Google it, it actually is a real-time feed of mortgage companies that are imploding or going out of business, and it's pretty much a live feed.
I'm gonna share my screen here.
And over the last, I was talking to a friend that
is this it right here?
That's the one. Yep.
Where do I click?
So yeah, it literally just keeps track of everybody who's shuttering their doors on a daily basis.
And these are the mortgage lenders.
Correct.
I see.
And you can tell this is an old school web.
Yeah.
Just based on the format. But the number of mortgage companies that of friends that I have that work at these other places that have gone out of business in the last 90 days is bananas, because
is it really?
They don't have application volume. They're not booking things. Rates are skyrocketing. Contract cancellations are almost at an all-time high. So it's like we can't afford to keep staff. So it's grim, dude.
Boy, is there any light at the tunnel?
I think sellers are getting, but when I say seller, so on a purchase transaction, getting more amenable to covering sizable costs for the interest rate buy down. I think we talked about on our last podcast episode, or covering costs. New construction builders, at least the handful that I work with off and on, aren't lowering their prices, but they are giving significant costs, like or credits towards closing costs. Like on one of them, they're crediting the buyers almost $30,000.
I've heard that like, they almost, because of the way the way they price things, they can't cut their prices, but they can throw in all sorts of other stuff because they can't mess up, especially for big home builders. They can't mess up the financials of the transactions by adjusting the cost. But whether it's flat screens or solar or whatever it is they're throwing in, they can do that.
Right. And they can't destroy the comparables in their own new communities that they're building by discounting prices.
So for the real estate industry, whether it's mortgages or probably realtors as well, I imagine this is about survival here for the short term.
Absolutely.
But understanding, like, I think we're all waiting. This is investors as well, waiting for the Federal Reserve to finally wave the white flag and for the beatings to finally stop. And they say, we're at our terminal rate of, let's call it 5.5%. And that's where they're going to stop. That, we saw Treasury rates start to come down, and that's where it can trickle through to mortgages. Earlier in the year when it looked like the Fed was close to its terminal rate. So I don't know what you're saying, but it seems to be plausible that we could these rates could peak here at some point over the summer. What they peak at, I think, is still an open question. But do you get that sense that we could be close to peak rates where we could be coming down?
I think so. I think we're almost already there because and I'm just one guy in Fresno, but
but you've got your finger on the pulse.
I do. And not that this means anything about anything, but I have my licenses in 15 states. So it's not like I'm talking about Fresno or Clovis proper. This is literally, most of the country. Things have stalled out to such a degree that raising rates even more, you've already squeezed everything out of the turnip. There's nothing else left to squeeze.
Yeah.
So going from 7 to I'm going to make this up, 7 to 7.5, like what's done is done.
Right. Yeah. And you triple rates or almost triple rates. What's another 0.25%? It's not going to be the decision of someone buying or not buying.
Right. So so when families reach out to you on this topic, like what's kind of the guidance that you share with them?
Well, I think some of it's hard. It's hard to have a good answer for somebody. For people, some aren't even asking. People who are in their place, even if they bought in the last couple of years, like the mortgage vintages show. I mean, I'm sure a lot of these are refinances, but a lot of people were buying places in 2021 and 22. And they don't really care that they're underwater because it's probably just by a little bit. And they've got this ridiculously low rate that they want to hold on to. The questions I get are for people who are like new home buyers who have been waiting and waiting and waiting. They were essentially priced out of the market in 20 and 21, or the competition was so stiff with buyers coming in with cash, coming over the top, paying way, way over asking, and they just couldn't compete. So now they're sitting on a bunch of cash saying, well, is now the right time for me to get in? And, I always default to say, well, it depends on your cash flow. I think some are getting really impatient thinking, you know what? I'm just going to, if prices come down a little bit more, I'm going to buy the house, have the mortgage that's higher than I wanted to pay, and I'll refinance it when 30-year mortgages drop from 7 to 5%. And they just kind of, I don't think we're at that tipping point yet because prices haven't come down enough. But if home prices start to come down, I could see that starting to happen more and more. And then it just depends. It's a waiting game for some of these folks. I imagine you probably see a little bit of the same.
Same. Yeah, exactly. Exactly the same.
But there is a whole, there's a whole group of people in their 20s who've been saving. And even though they were saving, they couldn't get in when things were more affordable because the market was so competitive and there was such little supply. And now prices haven't come down enough for them to warrant paying that much. But I do think at some point people are going to bite off that higher interest rate thinking, to hell with this. I'm just going to get into a house, start building equity. And, when rates come down, I'll do the refinancing. And they're just going to kind of take it on the chin for a couple of years in terms of their mortgage rate.
Sure. Do you have that the chart that shows the 40 years of mortgage or 30-year mortgage rate history
by vintage.
Just the actual chart. I think I sent you the link.
Oh! I think I do. I have it here? I know.
That one really blew my mind as far as like seeing what's transpired here over the last couple years.
Let me see what the one.
There should be a link in the body of that email.
Oh, the macro trends, 30-year. Yep. Hold on, let me get that here. I think my pop-up blocker is blocking me here.
Well, we're definitely living through interesting times. Like,
yeah, well, I'm sick of saying it's historic, but I think this is what you're looking for. Is this what you're looking for?
That's the one. Here? Yep. Okay.
So I'm going to blow this up a little bit. See if I can't.
That's amazing. This chart goes all the way back to 1970 and tracks 30-year fixed rate mortgages. And like I went back, I was born in 1979, so I wanted to see like, what were rates in 1979?
Oh, yeah.
It's really bananas to look at what has happened here just since 2019.
Oh, I know. Well, so I've talked with someone. I can pull up the Fed fund rate too. The way I talk about it with everybody is we go through these cycles, right? So interest rates, inflation peaked in 81 at 13.5%. More interest rates peaked somewhere in around 20%. You can see the mortgage rate in October 1981 was almost 18.5%. And we broke the back of inflation and things came down pretty quickly. We had the go-go 80s with rates falling because that's stimulative, you could say, for the economy. We have, things were going so well. Even Michael Douglas was making movies about Wall Street, right?
Yep.
You get to the early 90s, and then here we go again, early 90s, because gray here is the recession, I think. You get to the early 90s, rates start going up again because we have some inflation. Greenspan starts raising rates. Clinton's running for president saying it's the economy stupid, right? Because we have this recession. And then that cools off. One could argue we had a soft landing, and then rates come down again. And, as rates come down, that's stimulative again. And you have the 90s where things were going really well. And then rates go up again, popping the tech bubble. And you can see the recession here. And then we have the Great Recession. Each time, interest rates rising are what kind of pops that bubble. But you can see one of the things, if I pulled up the Fed fund rate, is it's usually like 0.25% over time relentlessly. This jump here that we've had in the last 12 months has been insane. I mean, we've had rates higher, but I can't remember rates moving this high this quickly. It hasn't happened since we were in diapers.
Yep.
And if you are of a certain age, this is the war story that you tell. Oh, well, my first mortgage was, we felt lucky that we got a 13% mortgages when they were 16%, right? But also in time, everybody was refinancing and chasing that downward spiral. We'll see. I think at some point though, you'll probably end up writing a whole bunch of mortgages for people at 6.5%, right?
It's definitely going to be kind of a mini refinance boom, as soon as the storm blows over. That's for sure.
Sure. And I mean, I think we could probably both agree that 30-year mortgages at what was it? I don't think I have the rates on here. 30-year mortgages at what, 2 and call it a little bit more than 2 3/4 is, I mean, that's historically low, right? If we get back to that other chart we were just looking at, rates have been higher than where let me get back to it. In fact, as I talk about it, we were here. Rates haven't been this low in 40 years. Right. So that's an anomaly also. This spike is out of control. Landing somewhere in the 4 or 5% range is probably what some would consider a normal 30-year mortgage.
Yeah, it's healthy.
Healthy, doesn't lead to bubbles. This is the hangover from the COVID stimulus.
That's a great phrase. I'm actually going to pirate that one from you. That's a great phrase.
It's all yours. I'm not the first one to say hangover. But that's what it feels like, right? It is like everybody was going bonkers for a while, partying like it's 1999, mortgages, refi, and now we're waking up on Sunday morning feeling it. That's rough. That's rough. Well,
well, in some, and I think I'm gonna let you go first, and then I can go. Like,
okay,
definitely not holding your feet to the fire, but where do you think we're headed?
I think we're headed for a recession. The question, and I stuck with charts today on how related to housing and mortgages, but like the last podcast episode I had was leading economic indicators, and it is, it's pretty dark, man. I'll be honest with you. It's every leading indicator we have spells recession. The yield curve inversion, so interest rates are higher on 2-year treasuries than 10-year treasuries. That's backwards. You should be paid more for your money being locked up longer. That kind of upside down and backward stuff we don't have unless we're headed to a recession. Now, inverted yield curves don't tell us how long or bad the recession is going to be, so it could be brief. It could be, I mean, I'm not saying this is going to be 2008. It's just there's more hangover. There's a hangover in other sectors of the economy, like housing is feeling now, is how I would say. If the unemployment rate doubles, that means it's going to go from 3-something% to 6-something. In historical recession terms, that's not that bad. Mid single digits, but that's kind of what it's going to take. And it's not here yet because you can't have a recession with a 3% unemployment rate. So I think that's what's in store. I think a lot of people who have been jumping jobs, you read about it where they, someone's jumping a job every 6 months because the labor market's so tight. So they go somewhere else in 8 months and get paid $10,000 more. And then a year later, $10,000 more at a different job. I think there's going to be a real challenge of those, where the last ones in will be the first ones out. And so that's where it may come. We'll see. It's really opaque. I think that's the difficult part. And that's what makes, you predicting what's going on with mortgages or me predicting what's going on with the economy tough. We haven't done this in a real long time, if ever. The move of the Fed fund rate, the speed, it's going to take a while to filter into everything else. And waiting for that to happen is just, it's a waiting game,
and I guess footnote to your answer is, do you think they've gone too fast, too far?
No, I don't know. I don't know is the answer. I think, I don't think they need to do a 50 basis point increase here in the next one. I think they could get the Fed fund rate to 5% and wait. It takes time for it to filter through. Certainly, all the Federal Reserve can do is destroy demand. They can't increase supply, but we don't have the supply chain issues that we had. We were all making jokes about, that thing that you're waiting for is floating off the coast of Long Beach on a shipping route. The cost of shipping between here and Asia has gone back to pre-COVID levels. The cost of materials, we were talking lumber was the joke, right? Lumber prices were like, out of control with COVID. That's back to pre-COVID levels. Energy prices are coming back down. The way I describe it is if you're having some work done on your house, which you've had done recently, right? The cost of drywall is back what it was before, but the cost of the guy putting it up in your house is still way high. So almost all of these inflation problems relate to labor. And so a recession is going to be solving that last step of the problem, which is increasing unemployment, bringing labor costs back down. It's going to be painful.
Grim, dude.
I know this turned into a real dark podcast.
Well, I guess the silver lining maybe, and I think we might have touched on this briefly on our last visit. There's a lot of families who are like, Joe, we're going to put our project on hold and we're going to wait for the housing market to crash. And there's going to be a ton of deals floating around, foreclosures. And I don't think that's going to happen at all. You've got, and just very briefly, you've got a whole raft of consumer protection laws that are in place now that never existed back in 2008, 2012 period.
Yeah.
So those days of like robo signing documents and notice of defaults, like that's gone.
Right.
Mortgage companies they have to document all the due diligence over almost a 2-year period.
Right.
To complete a foreclosure process. So you've got population growth, you have families that are growing.
Well, the bad practices that were going on in 2005 and 6 just haven't happened.
They don't exist. Yeah. Stated income, adjustable rates, 100% finance. None of it exists.
And home builders they've been conservative for a decade and a half. That's one of the reasons why supply has been so low. Right. I don't think lightning strikes twice in the same place. If anything, so people, when you have rates go up, you have bubbles kind of popping, whether it was like the tech bubble popping in the early 2000s or the housing bubble popping. I would say we're getting a version of a tech bubble 2.0 where you have all these crazy COVID valuations on stocks like Netflix and Facebook have come crashing back down because people were overpaying for that. You had the COVID darlings like Peloton and Zoom coming back into reality. And then you have stuff at the fringes like cryptocurrencies kind of blowing up spectacularly, or the exchanges at least. So I almost feels like a tech bubble 2.0. And then how deep does this filter into the economy? I think it doesn't necessarily, especially with like the crypto stuff. It's such at the fringes. It's not like in the heart of our economy like housing was a decade and a half ago. So our recession that we wind up with could be shallow and brief. It really could be. It's just we've got to take the medicine now for all of this. And I think one of the things in your industry and with what we do here is that we are like mortgage applications is like a leading indicator, right? It's someone preparing to have some economic activity go on, or building permits would be another one where it's forward looking, right? It's a permit to be able to then engage in some economic activity. Stock market's forward looking. And so what you've endured over the last 12 months and what the stock market has endured over the last 12 months, you could say has hopefully been kind of pricing in the leading edge of this. And so while we're all the first ones into this kind of difficult stretch, we'll also be the first ones out of the difficult stretch. And the most lagging indicator is unemployment. That's what comes on last. And so we could be finding ourselves in or even on our way out of a recession when unemployment starts to tick higher. And it's because that's the end result of all of this kind of reorganizing that's been going on. So
well, my takeaway from your comment is, and I hope it's true, I'd rather be first in, first out.
Yeah, absolutely. Like rip off the Band-Aid, let's get it over with.
Man, it's been, I think the mortgage housing deal has been like getting tossed into a wood chipper full of broken glass and set on fire at the end.
Yeah. It's been a rough go. Well, as dark as this has been, let's lighten this up on the way out. I've got a couple good questions.
Do it.
So, well, and I guess this relates to kind of this difficult stretch. The most important lesson you've learned over the last year in dealing with all of this?
I've been very pragmatic about it. And I think I started doing this back in 2002, or mortgages in 2002.
Right.
And I've really enjoyed the time, like that you and I got to spend together, hanging out with a family, friends that I haven't seen in a couple of years will say like, "Hey Joe, do you want to go to lunch in 20 minutes? I'm in town." And normal Joe is like, I wish you would have let me know sooner, but I really enjoyed life.
That's great. That's great. Well, that's absolutely finding the silver lining and finding some balance. A lot of people found their balance during COVID because they were stuck at home or couldn't go into work, but they were finding, hey, working from home, this works well. But you were going gangbusters during that time, so you're maybe finding the balance that everybody was forced to find a couple of years ago.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna do rapid fire now.
All right.
You're leaving. You're going out of town. Hotel or Airbnb?
Hotel.
Me too.
Hotel.
I won't get into it. I prefer hotels, right? I want to check in, check out, not worry about all the other stuff. I get why people like Airbnb, but I'm a hotel guy too. Okay. Rank from your least favorite to most favorite. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram.
Ooh, okay.
Favorite to most favorite.
Okay, so I don't use Twitter. I've never been on Facebook ever in my life. Allegedly I have one, but I've never seen it.
You're not missing anything.
I would say YouTube and Instagram are by far my favorites. I use them every day.
Yeah. I like Instagram. I am on YouTube for 100 different things. I would say YouTube is probably number one for me. Mm-hmm. Facebook might be dead last. I just don't. Facebook's like having to use email. It's like a necessity at this point.
Yeah.
And for some things, but
I think my mom's on there.
Everybody's mom's on there. I think that's what's made it less cool. That's what's made it less cool. I didn't list Instagram in there. I know I'm sorry, not Instagram. I didn't list LinkedIn on there.
Oh, I guess the funny quick 20 seconds on LinkedIn is when it first came out, 2004 or something like that, I got an email from somebody that I knew that said, "Hey, I want to be your friend on LinkedIn." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I know that person." Okay. I never logged on until 2019. It was just, I kept saying yes.
Oh, cool.
And then in 2019, I actually started using it. And now actually I do get on there every day. And I don't use it for a lot, but I think it's really interesting for professional stuff.
Yes, I can tell you it's LinkedIn's been great for hiring. And it's interesting. I think there's a lot more engagement. I think there are a lot more people lurking on LinkedIn, because I will go and talk to people, whether it's at a Fresno State game or even just bump into them going out and get lunch, and they'll say, "Oh, I saw that thing you posted on LinkedIn." I had no idea they were on LinkedIn. They just kind of hang in the background. So LinkedIn's kind of an interesting, different beast. Okay, let's wrap up with this last one.
Okay.
What are you reading, watching, and listening to right now?
Ooh, reading. I'm reading a biography, one of the best books I've read in a long time, about Bo Jackson.
Oh, awesome.
What am I listening to? Actually today, right before I hopped on our visit, my all-time favorite album. If you said I'd listened to it 1,000 times, it wouldn't surprise me at all. It's by an artist named Remy, Remy Shand.
Wait,
Remy Shand.
It cut out there for a second. What was the album?
The artist name is Remy,
okay.
Remy Shand. And I think what makes it really interesting, it's kind of R&B, blue-eyed soul, but he wrote all the songs, did all the vocals, played all the instruments, and did all of the production.
Oh, that's awesome.
He actually won a couple awards. It was his only album, and then he faded into the mist of time.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Oh, dude. And watching. What are we watching?
Ooh, last night we watched that Chris Rock Netflix show. I don't know what to say about all that. I guess it was a cultural moment.
Was it good?
Yeah.
Does he still have his fastball?
I think it was interesting that he talked about things that people wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. So I guess there's that.
That's what that's what comedians are for, though, right? Is to kind of touch nerves.
So I would say, what am I looking forward most to watching? Yellowstone, how it cut off in the middle of the most recent season, and we're just like left hanging, scratching our heads. And I think it's like end of May, first week of June, we get to see like where the story picks back up. So that's probably what I'm most excited to watch.
Okay. Well, so it's interesting. I just finished for what I'm watching. I watched 1923. I have not watched Yellowstone. Never watched Yellowstone.
So
I've watched the prequels of Yellowstone. So that's been kind of interesting. It's been, I would say it's okay. That, and I've watched the Netflix documentaries of Drive to Survive, that Formula One.
That's next in our queue. Is it good?
I watched the golf one also. Even if you're not into golf, I think it's called Full Swing. The golf one's also very good. I was disappointed by the tennis one, but I've been told by people that's just because I play tennis, and so I'm expecting too much. I'm reading the Phil Mickelson biography, actually.
Okay.
And then listening to I've been listening more and more to the All In podcast, which is a venture capitalist basically talking about what's going on. It's kind of an interesting take on one side of finance. And then I've got a suggestion for you. I was watching the Grammys, I like watching award shows. It's my thing. I don't know why. I watched the Oscars this weekend, but someone who I had never heard of won an Oscar or won a Grammy, Samara Joy. It's like jazzy. She's really, really young. Jazz.
Oh, you have to send this to me.
She's great, man. She's great if you're into that kind of music, and even if it's not, it's worth a listen. Yeah. Samara Joy. She's really, really good. Okay. So there you go. Those are the picks.
See,
cool, man. Well, we've been going for a while. I will let you run. Thanks for doing this. We'll do it again. And I expect each time we do it, it'll get lighter and lighter because the news will be better and better. Where we say, hey, things are picking up, man.
Yeah, I look forward to our next visit. Be like, hey, you'll never guess. Here's what's happening. I love that.
Things are thawing out finally. Yes.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I appreciate you. I love your show. It's now I can say long-time listener, second-time caller.
Second-time caller. There you go. Exactly right. Well, good stuff. All right, Joe. Well, you have a good weekend, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Perfect. Sounds good, brother. Be good.
Bye.